Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I am your host, Tiffany Daniels, and I'm merry, stupid o'clock to one and all. Now, before we get started this morning, going back to that horrible world known as the JRC and get into our usual disclaimers, I want to talk this morning a little bit about what happened today about 20 years ago. So at the time, yes, I'm a band geek. Once a band geek, always a band geek. I played the flute. And on September 11th, 2001, I remember being struck because I was walking in. I had to, in order to get to school, I had to climb this like really steep kind of spirally concrete staircase, cross across the pavement, the parking lot for the old state hospital. Was MRC at the time. I think it's a VA hospital now. And go through a hole in the fence to get to school. And it was an eerily beautiful day. And I just remember that something felt particularly off. I had early morning band practice that day, so like today, I was up at early stupid o'clock and I had to go in there, get my band uniform, and it was disgustingly hot, even though it was beautiful out, and go out to the field for early morning band. And my band director, whose name escapes me, God, that's horrible. I remember we stopped in the middle of doing one of our marching formations because we were both concert band and marching band. And he just went on this anti-Al Qaeda rant, which seemed to me really odd. It seemed like it was coming out of nowhere. An early morning band went into regular band class, and then after we came back in and we got the band uniforms off, and I put my flute up and stored it in the back closet for the day to pick up later after school. I went into my second class of the day, which was my advanced English class. And right as I sat down, I saw the second plane go into the second tower. And I remember completely freaking out because, as some of you who watch this channel know, I have family that lives on the East Coast. And at that time, we had no idea if anywhere else in the East Coast or elsewhere was going to get struck. So I was freaking out, asked to go to the principal's office. So I went up there and I asked the secretary if I could get a hold of my dad because I wanted to make sure that my aunts, my grandparents, and my cousins were okay. Thankfully, they were. My Aunt Julia, who's no longer with us, was okay at the time. Her and her husband were nowhere near the World Trade Center, and nowhere else, thankfully, got struck that day other than the Pentagon and the one that went down in Pennsylvania. And I came home just to scenes of destruction, and I'm still struck by seeing the people jump from the buildings. I'm also reminded of back a few years ago when I was working for the state, and I got home at 5 o'clock. And at this point in time, my brother was in the Army, and he just came homeside, and he was stationed at Fort Hood, Texas. And I was asked by my then ex, have you seen the news? And so I turned on the news and I saw that there had been attack on Fort Hood. And I remember trying to get a hold of everyone. I called my mom, my aunt, my uncle, my granny. I couldn't get a hold of anyone. I kept calling my brother's cell repeatedly over and over and over again. And I was terrified because I was getting no answers. And finally, at 11 o'clock, he texted me in pure his style, "What do you want?" But yeah, those two incidents have always been connected to me. I just want to give a little tad bit of those two particular days in particular. Now let's go back to our subject, that horrible world known as the JRC. We are picking up where we left off yesterday in regards to the August 26, 2007 incident. Before we get started, you are going to see the link to this particular report right there in the description, as well as other pertinent links to the Stop the Shock campaign. Folks, fill out the templates for the letters in regards to the bill we are trying to pass to get improper restraints removed from schools. Fill out the templates that's going to remove public funding from the JRC. You literally fill out your name, click on your senator. It's the most important 2 minutes you'll spend today. Also, if you haven't signed the change.org petition to shut down the Judge Rotenberg Center, folks, get it done. All right, so we are going into the summary of the facts of August 26, 2007. We're going into the background. So far, this judge has been so far way off base to be sad, but let's go ahead and take a look at what they're going to be telling us today. So, background. Apparently 2 weeks prior to the August 2007 incident, Mark Poe ran away from JRC staff that was traveling with him so that he could take the Regents exams in New York. Mark Poe had been a resident of Stoughton Residence and had intimate knowledge of the student staff and layout of the residence. Gee, you mean like you do with most of your students? As I said, pot, kettle. There was 6 staff persons working at the residence, which houses 12 students. 3 of the staff were assigned shifts that required them to remain awake through the night. Can we stop giving excuses to the staff that did this, Judge? Can that be a thing? Jeez. 3 of the staff had worked a whole day shift on Saturday, August the 25th, beginning at 7 a.m. and 8 a.m., and were assigned as sleep aides for the overnight shift, meaning that they would sleep unless there was a crisis and the awake staff needed assistance. You mean in shocking people? For the love of God, Judge, quit making excuses for this school. Just stop. I don't care if they had been up for 24 hours straight. There is no excuse. Okay? We good? Thank you. 4 of the staff had been employed for less than 3 months at JRC. No other excuse. Oh my God, just stop. Who was assigned supervisor that evening and worked for JRC for 3 months to the day. Again, why is that relevant? There were 3 staff persons working in the DVR monitoring department on the night of the incident. All 3 staff were on a 12 a.m. to 8 a.m. shift, and they were charged with monitoring 36 total residents. Quit. For the love of God, quit making excuses as to how this happened, Judge. Just stop. The people who are lining your pocket created a culture that allowed this event to happen. They tortured disabled people. Okay? The only thing that pissed off the JRC about this incident were they weren't the ones who did it. Just saying. Events at the Stoughton house. Mark Poe called it the Staten residence at 1:57 a.m. on August 26, 2007. Blank answered the phone. Mark Poe claimed to be a JRC employee. Excuse me, allergies. Blank from the JRC DVR monitoring department. Oh, you mean those wonderful sick freaking lawyers? And asked for the identity of the supervisor. And Blank replied that it was Blank, stated that he would get Blank, and Mark Poe told him not to do this. Mark Poe told Blank that John Doe had exhibited behaviors at 9 p.m. that needed consequated. Mark Poe stated that he had pre-verified the GED applications with John Doe's clinician and senior staff at JRC. The staff later claimed they did not follow verification procedures because they believed that the GEDs had been pre-verified. Good God. As I said, they created a culture where these people don't question anything. Briefly spoke with Mark Poe and handed the phone back to Blank. Blank looked at John Doe's recording sheet and confirmed that the behaviors named by Mark Poe were GED consequated behaviors. Blank told both investigators from the DEEC and DPPC that he was not aware of the events initially, but review of the DVR recording showed Blank was present the entire time. Blank initially delivered GED applications to John Doe while he was in bed, and Blank did not wake John Doe first. Think about that. They are so used to depriving these students of sleep and torturing them in their sleep that they didn't even think that maybe this time it was quote unquote wrong. It's always wrong. How desensitized are you as a human being? Well, you just went and proved Jennifer Masamba's point. Right here, Judge. Thank you. I hope her lawyers see that. When John Doe received the initial GEDs, he reminded staff that his recording sheet only permitted 2 hours of latency. Mark Poe told Blake to put a torso GED device on John Doe. He protested, stating that his program does not call for torso devices. John Doe asked staff to call his clinician and even told them where the phone directory was located. Staff reported that they did not question Mark Poe's instructions because the caller told them they would be evaluated for failure to cooperate. So essentially, this former student is using their own rules against them in order to make this event happen. So think about it. JRC created this whole atmosphere of fear, not just in their students, but in their staff as well, saying that they would be evaluated. There would be consequences if they didn't do this. Pretty sick, isn't it? Staff assumed they were being watched by DVR monitoring and that they might be subjects to a program op exercise. One of the sleep staff explained that he did not ask questions when he realized what was going on because in a crisis, you do not ask what happened if you were not there. Oh, but you administered a torture? It is your job to check and double check, dude. At least that's what the JRC says. They say that you do due diligence every time you administer a shock. But your own judge that you all are paying is saying you didn't do that. And you want me to believe this is a one-off? I call major bullshit. Moving on. That they were reluctant to follow Mark Poe's directions, but Blank told them, "It's DVR, man." The staff reported to investigators that they needed jobs and did not want to be terminated or lose shifts because of insubordination. Really? You'd rather torture disabled people and be a part of that horrific culture than seek new employment? Because I don't care if my ass would have ended up homeless. I would take to the street before I would work in this school. Just saying. Another staff stated, "We don't question DVR." Hmm. That's obvious. Who was assigned as the shift supervisor reported that he had no prior experience with administering adversive treatment and that he looked to more experienced staff for guidance. Next, there was a standoff in the hallway between John Doe and Blank that lasted approximately 1.5 hours. John Doe had removed the batteries from his GED device, and Blank had another GED device to place on John Doe. Some staff questioned the idea of putting another student's GED device on John Doe, but other staff admonished him for questioning the directions of DVR. Don't question the monitor. Don't ever question torture. So even the staff, they not only tell students they're not allowed to question, not allowed to talk out, but apparently they do it to their staff too. And why did you linger in this place? I've walked out of jobs for less, I'm just saying. John Doe asked staff to make sure they knew who was really on the telephone. Staff eventually restrained John Doe and escorted him downstairs to the recreation room. Mark Poe told the staff that they would be evaluated if they did not get John Doe on the 4-point restraint board. John Doe told staff that the board is not part of his program and that they needed to check with his clinician or others. John Doe was compliant at this point, and staff placed John Doe on the board with a torso GED device. Notice that they don't want these kids to talk back. They don't want these kids to stand up for themselves. Do what you're told. Just take that torture. It's what you deserve for being disabled while breathing. Just saying. Blink administered the first GED downstairs, 8 overall, without verbally pinpointing the inappropriate behavior that was the reason for the GED application. Mark Poe told Blank to pull the straps tighter, which made the staff think that the DVR monitoring was watching them. John Doe began to complain that he could not breathe. Blank proceeded to administer 70 GED applications. Some applications had pinpoints for behavior, but others did not. Pinpoints included 3 for verbal threats to destroy, 6 for aggressive posturing, 4 for failing to follow directions. Jesus Christ, and you don't think there's anything wrong with this center judge? What the hell? The electrodes were intermittently rotated. The rotations occurred infrequently, with 6 or more GED applications between rotations. After the 10th GED, John Doe asked for water, which the staff gave to him along with a tissue to wipe his nose. After the 13th GED, John Doe began shaking and breathing deeply. The staff failed to count all of the GED applications, counting 9 total when there had been 15 given. After the 49th GED, John Doe asked if he could receive the rest of the applications in the morning because he was really tired. When 60 GEDs had been given, the staff's count was at 47. When the 70 GEDs were administered in the basement, John Doe was moved to Mark Poe's former bedroom in the residence to sleep. Staff observed that John Doe's skin was red. When he was in bed, John Doe told staff that his mouth was dry, blood pressure racing, and he was sweating. John Doe said he felt like he was about to have a stroke. Staff took no action. And they act like this is a one-up, and this staff was unique. They're not. What have we heard from Andre McCollin's incident? Yeah. Mark Poe also directed staff to administer GEDs to James Rowe. In total, James Rowe received 29 GED applications. Blink also administered the first GEDs to James Rowe while he was in bed. James Rowe was also put on the 4-point board in the basement and received additional GEDs there. James Rowe protested to the staff that the caller was not really from DVR. The staff did not rotate James Rowe's electrodes at all. James Rowe told staff that his leg was killing him and asked them to call a nurse. The staff did not act in response to these complaints. So they do not respond at all when they're telling them, look, this is what's going on with my body right now. At approximately 5 a.m., Mark Poe instructed staff to bring a third student, Paul No, to the recreation room and put him on the board for GEDs. The staff who had been with Paul at 9 p.m. questioned Mark Poe's instructions because the staff person did not personally observe the behaviors. Before Paul No received any GEDs, the cordless phone went dead, and staff called DVR monitoring directly. It was at this point that staff realized that they had been on the phone with someone other than blank of the DVR monitoring department the entire morning. The fact there's several things to unpack here before we close out. Think about it. The judge can excuse the staff and the JRC all he wants. He can say that they were up 24 hours straight, even 48 hours straight. But the fact of the matter is, this is the culture this place creates. These staff are obviously very familiar with similar threats that anytime they question an application of the GED, they would then be told there will be consequences if they don't. So they are automatically told to do it, almost as if it had been programmed into their brain. So all this tells me is that this is not a one-up. It tells me this is par the course. And these are the sort of things that they threaten the staff with if they don't follow orders. It also shows me that JRC creates a culture where staff never listen to the students. That when the student's telling them, hey, these GEDs are causing major health issues, I can't breathe, I can't stand, that staff is taught to ignore this and continuing to torture the disabled person. You cannot tell me, Judge. You cannot tell me that this is not normal, that this was just one incident, and otherwise GEDs are perfectly safe. By what you're reporting on here, by your own efforts, by what we're seeing here, you are seeing the effects that the GED applications have on a human being. So how you can know all of this and actually still defend this place is beyond me. This incident here should have opened your eyes to the culture that is cultivated in this horrible place. And the fact that it doesn't, the fact that it doesn't inform the rest of the judges throughout Massachusetts who sentences kids and young adults to this place should be disturbing to everyone. And on that final note, I'm going to go ahead and close out for this morning. Now, we don't get very many views on this channel. The few that we do get to get removed from time to time. So folks, please don't forget to hit that like button. Hit subscribe. Don't forget to hit the comments. Feed that algorithm. I do appreciate your time this morning. And as always, we here at Smelling Tea hope you have a good one. Bye-bye.